I'm John Myatt. I used to be an art forger, and it landed me in jail. But my brush with the law is well behind me. Now I prefer to paint legitimate fakes. In this series, I will take 6 iconic masterpieces and replace the principal characters with modern-day famous faces. As well as revealing the secrets behind the original paintings, I hope to reveal some secrets about my sitters. I've got just one day with them, so I need to be at the very top of my game. Actress Imelda Staunton was Oscar nominated for her role in the movie Vera Drake, and today she's joined by her husband, Jim Carter, who famously appeared in the Hollywood blockbuster Shakespeare in Love. So today I'm doing a double portrait, with the couple taking the place of Mr. and Mrs. Clark and Percy, the famous painting by David Hockney. Now this is no cosy wedding picture. There's a lot of unspoken tension in this painting. And it's a very brave move, really, for a couple who've been happily married together for over 15 years. David Hockney is probably the most popular and versatile artist working in Great Britain today. He painted this portrait of his designer friends Celia Birtwell and Ozzie Clark in 1970, and it is over 10 feet across in real life, a gigantic painting. The vast scale of this painting actually means that the figures themselves are almost life-size, so you get involved with them as well. The couple actually split very shortly after this painting was completed, and you can almost sense this here, that these strong verticals actually separate the two, and there's not a sense at all that there's any relationship going on between them, or in fact between them and the cat. This gigantic painting took David Hockney 9 months to complete, and he really struggled with some parts of it, particularly the likeness here of Mr. Clark. I, ladies and gentlemen, your tame artist, have got to finish the job in just one day. David Hockney was born in Bradford in 1937 and educated at the local grammar school. His only real exposure to art as a boy were the posters and signs he saw all around him. His father had attended art classes as an adult and encouraged the young Hockney to take a similar interest. At 16, he left Bradford Grammar School, where he'd only studied art for 1 year, to attend the local School of Art. Portrait of My Father, painted when he was still a teenager, is one of Hockney's earliest works in oil. He was amazed when it sold at a local exhibition for £10. It was his relationship with the people who sat for him that was to become central to his subsequent work. Much of his work has erotic overtones, and it was his love affair with fellow artist Peter Schlesinger that inspired one of his greatest paintings, Portrait of an Artist. I've not met Imelda and Jim before, so I'll need to size them up pretty quickly if I'm to capture the intimacy of their relationship, Hockney style.
Hello. Ah, John.
Imelda, so nice to meet you. Nice to meet John.
Yeah.
And Jim?
Jim, that's right. Yeah, hi, John.
Thank you for coming.
Well, it's very exciting for us. Very
Thank you.
exciting.
Actually, that's brilliant. That is
Isn't that
fabulous.
good?
Yeah, that's fabulous. Fantastic.
Good match.
And
Good.
Now then.
there's a few more pounds on me than on him, maybe. I'm more Kenneth Clark than Ozzie Clark, but never mind.
Well, there's a dynamic going on between these two, which is utterly different, I'm guessing, between the dynamic going on between you two. Well, if you'd like to assume the position, as they say, let's see what we've got, shall we?
Brilliant.
And have a look at it.
How beautiful this looks, isn't it? Fabulous.
The portrait was a wedding present from Hockney to Ozzie and Celia.
Right leg out.
But unusually for a picture that was supposed to celebrate a union, there was both a physical and an emotional distance between the couple. Let's just see what happens when you look at each other. I don't want that frosty dynamic in my version.
I like seeing you shorter than me.
Oh, yes, it's very rare. Enjoy it.
I think there's a lot to be said for you both looking at each other, you know. That's rather sweet. I like that. Imelda Staunton was born in North London in 1956 to an Irish immigrant family. At 17, she auditioned for RADA and studied alongside Alan Rickman, Juliet Stevenson and Timothy Spall. After learning her craft in the theatre, she won a BAFTA and an Oscar nomination for her role as backstreet abortionist Vera Drake. She met Jim Carter when they appeared together on stage in 1982, and they married 3 years later. Jim is a versatile actor who's appeared in everything from Dennis Potter's The Singing Detective to movies such as The Golden Compass. The pair, who have a daughter, Bessie, do occasionally appear together on screen, most recently in BBC drama Cranford.
I did not know. I truly did not know.
For my painting to be successful, I need to capture some of their off-screen chemistry as well. I'm pretty sure that, in fact, David approached this painting with at least some idea of what he was going to do almost before he put paint on the canvas, obviously. And if you do rough out your composition on graph paper, you're in a very good position to actually enlarge it later on because you've got your diagonals already there for you. You see, there's one. And there's the other. So you've got the middle of your painting. Now you can then do your sketch and say, right, I see it just like that on my figures. Now we need another diagonal. In fact, there's a diagonal here. And this is the crucial one, this diagonal on the right-hand side, because it's where Ozzy's, exactly, you see where Jim's putting his foot now. That, he must have felt that was very important. That foot buried in the shag pile down there is an important part of the painting against the vertical here of Celia. So he just roughed out. And then there were a series of sketches of Ozzy. He'd sketch him out and, look at the overall shape of the face, the angle of the eyes, and so he'd get that kind of angle across down here. Look at the chin. So he wouldn't necessarily be looking for a lightness at this stage. What he would be trying to find is an agreeable composition. So any number of these sketches would be made, and eventually they'd be transferred possibly to a larger sketch where everything was worked out in detail, and from there to the canvas. Like Hockney, Mr. and Mrs. Clark were from the north of England. After moving south, they all lived together for a while in London and became quite close, so Hockney would have been aware of any tensions between them. An unconventional couple, fashion designer Ozzy Clark and fabric designer Celia Birtwell, married in 1969. Ozzy was a major figure in the swinging 60s, renowned for his vintage designs worn by the likes of Jimi Hendrix. When he was younger, his mum was said to have given him prescription pills to keep him alert. This would be the start of a lifelong addiction to drugs. Celia has been described as the most important textile designer of her generation. The Clarks had 2 sons together, but Ozzy, who was openly bisexual, continued to have affairs with both men and women during their marriage. As his partying got harder and his debts mounted, their relationship suffered. They eventually divorced in 1975. The portrait, set in the couple's marital home in Notting Hill, wasn't with them for long, as it was sold to the Tate Gallery for some quick cash. The reason I'm applying water is so that the paint can be spread around the canvas easily. I'm now applying this area, coming up to the masking tape here, and creating an area of the painting here. Great way of covering ground quickly. If you look at that painting, A Bigger Splash by David Hockney, sponge rollers are very, very inevident. But one of the nice things about them is that if you look at what's happening here on this canvas, it's a great way of covering an area in quite a uniform way. And it also is, to some extent, detaches the artist from the actual painted surface. And a lot of people were quite interested in that in the 60s. It's almost as though you're a spectator to your own performance. So, in a sense, you're covering your tracks. There aren't kind of brush marks here. This is part of the kind of step back.
Because it's sort of more mechanical than a brush or something.
Very much so, Jim, in a sense. Yes. And also, it's a take on the kind of fine art kind of thing, where everything is kind of revered. Here we are using sponge rollers, that kind of thing. Yeah. Turn this over so I can just do the same thing again. Imelda had only ever appeared in the theatre until she was 30. Now both she and Jim enjoy successful careers on both the small and the big screen. But theatre remains their passion. Did you do a lot of rep then, both of you?
I sort of came in, when I started in the 70s, 3 weekly rep.
Is this how you met, the rep?
We didn't meet in rep, no.
No, we met at doing Guys and Dolls at the National Theatre in '82. He was the biggest, I was the smallest.
He was a guy and you were a dog.
Yeah, and we were an accident of choreography, really. We were told in the prologue to be upstage left, sort of making up a bit of action. So we bonded.
And then your eyes met and... How lovely.
Yeah, it was great.
It's already clear that Jim and Imelda are a lot happier than perhaps the Clarks were, so I think it's the correct decision to have them facing each other. Hockney liked to study the subjects of his large paintings before he began, and photos and sketches helped him to do just this. He was a superlative draftsman as well as a painter.
This is a process, what you might call learning the face. If you spend long enough with the face, I mean long enough by several days or more, you can almost draw the face without the sitter being there. It's just a great help, however far off you actually are. It must have been an interesting, a different experience working on the Vera Drake film for you.
Mike Lee works in a completely different way. So
Yeah.
I'd never worked with him before, and for 6 months you prepare the film, which means literally creating all the characters. And there's no script, but with this film, he knew what it was going to be about. He knew there was an abortionist, and that's the subject he wanted to make the film about.
Mike Lee has always worked in a unique way. Everything is on a need-to-know basis. Groups of actors often rehearse separately before they're thrown together for the first time with the cameras rolling.
That whole section in the film where police arrived, I mean, I, Imelda, and all of us had no idea that there were actors who were for 6 months somewhere else in this disused hospital where we made it and rehearsed it. They were preparing to be police, and they didn't know who we were. So then he put us together, and it was an 8-hour improvisation where you just had to run with it.
Crikey.
And it was pretty frightening and exhilarating and extraordinary.
Yeah.
And nothing work-wise, I'm afraid, will ever match that day. For all of us, I think. It was a pretty extraordinary
Like a big bungee
event.
jump, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just,
Oh, it is, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it's like Mike Lee saying, we're in the aeroplane, I'd like you to jump, there's no parachute, but you'll be absolutely fine.
yes.
OK, off we go.
Is that kind of the one you look back on there and think, that is kind of, that's the one for me?
That film?
Yeah.
Well, yes, because of the work, because
Yeah.
of what it brought out of me, because of what we dealt with in the film.
What I'm doing now is I'm going to do what David Hockney did, and that is use a photograph to actually help me, assist me with getting my likenesses. It's quite likely that Hockney used 35mm. We're using Polaroid because they sort of develop themselves within a matter of minutes, which is helpful for our purposes. So, profile of Imelda, here we go. A little hint of a smile there, Jim, if you could. That's the one.
Hockney took months to complete his painting, and he knew his subjects intimately. I've got just one day, and I barely even started. Will I be able to do Jim and Imelda's relationship justice? I'm putting actor couple Imelda Staunton and Jim Carter in place of Ozzie Clark and Celia Birtwell in my version of David Hockney's Mr. and Mrs. Clark and Percy. What makes Hockney such a fabulous artist is his ability to tell a story in a painting and really get under the skin of his subjects. He is very much the artist as protagonist. In other words, the real subject of the painting, particularly in this case, is himself and his relationship with his sitters. He knew there was tension in the Clarks' relationship, and it shows. In the spirit of Hockney, I too need to show Imelda and Jim's relationship as I see it.
I've made the switch over now to a canvas that I did actually prepare earlier. You can see that even at half size, this is a pretty gigantic canvas. It's a 5-footer, not a 10-footer. But although I've blocked and established the main areas, I've left the seated figure here. So I'm now going to work on Jim's likeness and just resolve the outlines of the chair, Jim's hands and so forth, and concentrate then on the all-important question of actually getting the figures right in the painting to suit our needs today.